Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So in this video we're going to be looking at a really important question from an interview standpoint, which is the get subsequences question or the get subset question, right? Now, what is a subsequences before we do anything? So the slide says it. Any sequence that can be formed from a parent sequence is a subsequence, right? So that's how simple it is. Now that might not make a lot of sense, so we're going to go ahead and look at an example. So the subsequence of the string BC is going to be a blank string, then B, then C, then BC. So CB would not count as a subsequence because it is a not valid sequence, right? So it is not following the same sequence as BC. It's the reverse. So yeah, now let's look at another example. So ABC would be something like this, right? A, B, C, A, B, A, C, B, C, and ABC, and you get the point. So this is what a subsequence is. Now that we know what a subsequence is, now we're going to have to find a way to get the subsequences of a string that will be given to us in the function, and we'll be returning that in an array list, right? So we're going to be coding that and also understanding the function in the whiteboard. By the way, in this video, we're going to be looking at the recursion version of this problem, right? So we can solve this using a loop, but I'm going to be teaching the recursive way because we're solidifying our recursive concepts, right? Now, what do we tend to do in recursion? We try to make the problem smaller and smaller and smaller, and then get to a base case and then solve the bigger problem by bubbling up the base case, right? So let's try to do the same in this case too. Now, if we compare the subsequences of BC and ABC, and before I do that, let me tell you, the length of any subsequence of a string of length n would be 2 to the power of n, right? So n is the length of the string, as I said. So that is out of the way. Now, if we compare these two, so this is the subsequences of ABC, and this is the subsequences of BC, we'll find similarities. So what are they? You'll see that every single one of the subsequences that are in this array of BC is in the array of ABC too. So this is there, this is there, this is there, and BC is also there. Now, there are some things that are different, right? Obviously. So what are different? These are the things that are differing in those two arrays. A, AB, AC, and ABC. So that is fine. We'll deal with that. So if you look at it closely, you'll see that if you slap or if you add A to these subsequences, you'll get this back, right? So if you add A to the blank string, you'll get A back. If you add A to the B, you'll get AB. You'll get AC if you add A to the C, and you'll get ABC if you add A to the BC, right? So, now we have some relation. So we can now take the subsequence of BC and then get the subsequence of ABC by just adding this and this together, right? So now let's come to our conclusion. So don't worry about this. We're going to go to the whiteboard and understand it deeply. But for now, just let's try to understand it and get an overview of it, right? So what do we find? We find that subsequences of ABC would return us A slapped with or added to the subsequences of BC, and then again the subsequence of BC itself, because that's what it is. So we have it repeated in here, and then we have this, which is basically the addition of A, or any character for that matter, which you want to get with this the subsequence. So now let's come to the whiteboard. What we have found is, if we know, so let's just do it like this. So the subsequence of ABC would be basically A plus subsequence of BC, right? Plus, obviously, we'll have this repeated again in the array, but you get the point. Let's try to make it a little better. So yeah, so if we have this answer, like this, and we can just basically make this. So what does recursion say? What have we learned in the previous videos? By the way, if you haven't watched my previous videos, which is about making the input of a function smaller and smaller, basically making the problem smaller and smaller, you should check that out. And also about the recursion leap of faith that we're going to be using in this case, right? So check those videos out before you kind of try to do this. So what we're seeing in here is if we find the subsequence of BC, we can get the subsequence of ABC. So we're going to trust, so now comes the leap of faith, right? So we're going to trust that our function is going to be returning us the subsequence of BC if we input ABC, and then we can just alter it and we can just add something to it, and then we're just going to get the answer, which is the subsequence of ABC. So we're going to get this answer from this smaller answer, right? So that's what we try to do in a lot of recursion functions. And let's try to code it up. Before that, we can look at the code, but we don't really have to. We can just code it up, right? And don't worry, I'm going to be simultaneously explaining you things as I'm coding it up, so we're just not coding and not understanding anything, right? So I'm going to make sure you understand it. So we're not going to do much in the main function other than calling the function itself, but we're going to have static. It's going to return an array list, so array list of a string, and let's call it generate subsequence. Just call it generate, doesn't matter. It's going to take a string as an argument. Now we're going to ignore the base case because we're going to talk about it later, but let's do the main function, right? So what we saw in here is we're trying to kind of divide this ABC into two parts. So the BC is going to be returning us the subsequence of BC, and A is we're going to use it to slap onto BC, right? So we're going to divide it into two parts. This is going to be the first character, and this is going to be our answer that we're going to get. So let's try to divide that. So let's try to get the first character, which is we're going to call it CH, let's say, doesn't matter. It's going to be the first character of the string. So let's start caret. By the way, I'm taking this example of ABC to make things clear. It can be for any other string, obviously. So we got the first character. This is the way we do it in Java. Now let's try to get the rest of the subsequences of the BC, right? So how are we going to get that? So it's going to be an array list. We're going to get the array list. So this is going to have the answer of the subsequence of BC. How? We're just going to see. Let's call it a rest answer, or just call it a rest. Doesn't really matter. So it's going to be having a recursive call. The same, it's going to be calling itself. And then we're going to be passing BC. So what is BC? BC is basically ABC without the first character. So how do we get that? How do we remove the first character? We just do this, s.substring. And we just remove the first character. And that's it. So we called our function for a string that doesn't have the first character. So we're removing the first character and we're making it smaller and smaller and smaller in each step. Right? Very simple. Now that we have this answer, we're going to trust that it's going to return us the answer perfectly fine. What we're going to do is we're going to have an answer array now that is going to contain the answer of the subsequence of ABC, right? So we're going to need an answer array because we're going to return an array, remember? So it's going to be string again. Let's call it answer because why not? New array list. So we didn't do anything fancy in this case. We're just initializing an array list. So now comes the real part. What we're doing in here is we're getting, So we're getting the answer of BC, which is like those 4 elements, right? So this is going to be returning as an array list with 4 elements because we know 2 to the power of 2 is 4. So this is going to contain the subsequences of BC. Now we're going to use this. So what we know is that the answer of ABC is going to be included, is going to be including this plus A slapped with A plus slapped with this, right? That is basically ABC. let's go back to the slide. We know that ABC is A slapped with the subsequences of B plus the subsequence of BC. Now we're basically going to do that, right? So we have the rest of the array. So this contains the subsequences of BC. Now just run a loop, right? So let's run a for each loop for string of, let's call it items, right? Or just call it subsequences, right? To make things even clearer. So this is going to be containing all of the subsequences of the returned answer or the array. So let's do it for rest, obviously, because that is our returned array. Now what we're going to do is in one case, we're just going to add this character, which is A. We're going to add it to all of the subsequences of BC. And in the second case, we're just going to add BC itself because we need this, right? We need this, right? So that's why we do it. So we do two things, right? So let's add the first one. So answer.add character plus the subsequences. So we're just slapping A with all of the subsequences of BC, right? In this loop. And also what we're doing is we're also adding subsequences just like that. I hope I'm not I'm misspelling some things. Just gonna copy and paste. So yeah, we're doing this too in order to maintain the remaining elements as well. And then we can just return our answer. Now, believe it or not, we're almost done with it, but we have our base case left, right? So before we discuss our base case, what we're going to do is we're going to try to understand what's going on in the recursive calls, right? Now, let's see. So if we have ABC in the function, what is this going to do? It's going to call BC, right? So come back to here. So we have ABC at first, and it's going to separate, it's going to divide the string into two parts. So we're going to have the first character, which is going to be A at first. And then we're going to be having the result array with the subsequences of BC, right? So subsequences of BC, right? So it's going to be calling BC. It's the generate of BC, right? So then it's going to go through all of this, right? And then B would be the first character. And we're going to be calling the same function for C, right? So this gets divided in here. Now C is here. Now C is again going to do the same thing, but C is going to be the first character, right? And the third step. And then we'd have nothing else because C is the only character. So we're going to be passing on an empty string as a recursive call. Now this is where our base case is, right? So let's code it up. If string.length reaches 0, it's going to be a base case. Now, the base case, right? So what do we know? The subsequences of a blank string is basically a blank string. There's nothing else. So we're just going to return that. So let's create a new answer array. List of string. Let's call it the base answer. And it's going to have... So it's going to have an empty string in it, right? Because that is the only subsequence of an empty string. Then we're just going to return base. So now it's going to work if we didn't do any compilation error. So now let's try to understand it. But before that, let's quickly play it once. So let's call the function and just print it at the same time. Generate of, let's say, ABC. Right? Let's run it, and if we don't have any error, it should print us. So, s.length, right? Let's run it, and now we have our answer, right? So ABC, BC, AC, you get the point. We have our answer, and it consists of an array with length of 8, which is to the power 3, right? 3 is the length of ABC. Now this is working, we know. So how did it work? Right? So when we return back an empty string, right, it's returned back to the C call in the call stack, right? So if you haven't seen my call stack video, please see that video. It's going to be about the factorial, I guess. So yeah, so it gets returned back to this, right? So this, now C has this, right? C has what? An array filled with just an empty string. Now C is going to utilize this to return back its subsequence to, you guessed it, to BC. So now C is going to perform all of these stuff, because after the call got executed, these stuff remained, right? So C is going to be like, oh, I have this answer now. Now I can do these stuff and return my answer back to my caller, which is BC, right? Because BC called C, remember? Now what is it going to do? It's going to do our main logic. It's going to add the character, which is C, with our subsequences. There's only one at this moment. And then it's going to again add the subsequences back. So which is also one. Like, it's just a simple single string, right? Empty string. So what are we going to have? So first, is it just has one element into it. So C plus the empty string would be C. And then again, it's going to add the empty string itself. So we're going to have, and then it's going to return the answer array, right? So we're going to have the answer as C and an empty string. So let's run it for just C to check if we're correct or not. And we are. So C and empty, right? So this is going to be returned to, you guessed it, to BC, right? And now BC is going to be like, oh, I have this answer now. Now I can do all of this thing as C did after C got its answer. So B would be the character, right? B is going to slap itself with the subsequences, then the subsequences will be added by themselves. And then we're going to have something like this. So this is nothing but B added to the subsequences of C that we just got returned back, and also the subsequences of C there. So the subsequences of C, we remember that was C and an empty string. Now if we add B to those two, we'll get BC and B, right? So very simple. Now this will then get back to ABC, and ABC now goes the same way, and it does all of these things. It slaps A to the subsequences of BC, and again the BC subsequences remains the same in the array. Then we return the answer, and then we get our final answer, which is basically this. So yeah, guys, that was the whole function, and I hope you could have gotten something out of this video, and I'm very hopeful that I tried to make this as simple as possible. So if you like this video, please leave a comment, like this video, and if you have any friends who are into these kind of stuff, please share with them. Thank you guys, and do subscribe because I'm posting every single day. Have a nice day.